Okay, Rick, we as an editorial team have been writing and talking quite a bit lately about carbon reduction and carbon neutrality, but more at the project level. There's been
Right.
tools created lately that help building teams and building owners measure and reduce embodied carbon on their projects. And of course, there are programs like AIA's 2030 Challenge. But I feel like your group, the Portland Cement Association, is proposing something much more substantial, which is taking an entire product category, one of the core product categories in the building segment, and aiming to achieve carbon neutrality. So, Rick, I'd love to have you, it's kind of all baked into or formalized into a roadmap of basically a white
Right.
paper that you guys produced earlier this year. Rick, can you kind of talk about the high level goals
Yeah,
of this roadmap?
you bet. And you know what? We are really unique because concrete is a universal building material, right?
Hmm.
I don't care what kind of building you build or structure, everything uses concrete. So
Hmm.
people really focus on cement and concrete. But here's the issue, they're missing a huge opportunity because our value chain starts at the cement plant, of course, with a product most people will never see called clinker. But then it goes and it's turned into cement. Well, and most people hear about cement. They confuse cement and concrete. And just for a baseline, cement is to concrete as flour is to cake, just so people know there is a difference. And too often they forget that. But concrete is not our final end product because concrete, like I said, goes into virtually every single construction project there is. And here's the other point, concrete, because of its resiliency, its durability, its strength, it lasts a long, long time. So let me give you just two quick examples. I point to the Parthenon. Okay, that's been around for well over 1,000 years. But then the other thing I'd like to point out is that when people fixate on cement and concrete, they're losing an opportunity to reduce carbon in the use phase of a building. So a lot of people don't realize this, but the Empire State Building is now coming up on its 100th birthday within a few years. Now, think about all the energy that goes into a building like that, and regardless of its construction type. So you think about the air conditioning, the heating, the cooling, the chillers, the boilers, the lighting, the electricity that's being consumed for everything from display screens to laptops to somebody's whatever. I mean, all that energy over a long period of time, that's a huge opportunity for people to look at to reduce carbon. So our roadmap looks at this entire value chain. And then, look, I don't think the Empire State Building is going to be around for 1,000 years, but at some point, these buildings are recyclable, right? So we can use that recycled material, especially with concrete. We can use that recycled material as aggregate for new concrete. And what most people don't realize is that concrete actually absorbs CO2. It's a fact. And we are very comfortable saying, look, given the amount of surface area over a period of time, et cetera, concrete will absorb about 10% of the CO2 emissions that were generated in the production of cement and concrete. Now, that's not a game changer, but the point is you can factor that in. So when we look at the roadmap, what I'm really passionate about is that people, instead of focusing on one segment, look at the entire value chain because everybody throughout the entire value chain has an opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint.
The stated goal of the roadmap is carbon neutrality by 2050, which
Right.
seems a far away, but we're going to blink and we're going to be
It,
10 years away from that goal. And it's almost overwhelming thinking about it now. There's so many players in this part of the industry. How was your roadmap received at World of Concrete, where it was first sort of released and presented? And how do you get an entire industry, supply chain, value chain to rally around a goal like this? Because there
so
are so
people,
many players.
right. So people are they are really excited, not just at World of Concrete, but at other events as we talk about it. And here's the thing, they're excited because until PCA came up with this roadmap, they were saying, well, look, I know I got to do something, but I don't know what to do and I don't know where I fit in. Now they have what I need to do, where I fit in. And that gives them direction. And they didn't have that before. So we're talking about direction for not just our cement companies. Yeah, they're the farthest upstream, but direction for the guys that make and produce concrete, not just ready mix concrete, but all concrete products. The folks that design concrete buildings, the folks that are going to occupy concrete buildings, the folks that build concrete buildings, every aspect of this now gives everybody on the value chain a reason and a direction. And that's really fundamentally what is so different from our roadmap than anybody else's. It's not just the value chain and saying we can do this. It's the value chain saying, hey, we, not just the cement industry, but we, the entire value chain, we can do this. 2050 is ambitious, but I'll tell you, we can do that sooner, provided we have the right policy support. So, I talk about the value chain, but the reality is we also are dealing with policymakers at the state and federal level, the folks that are doing building codes and standards and specifications, everybody. And I mean, it's such a ripple effect, but everybody has a role to play within this.
Can you outline some of the key challenges that lie ahead? I mean, can you talk about maybe some of the policy, what's lacking on the policy side? And I'd love to have you jump into some examples, especially on sort of the upstream side of it.
Right off the bat, something really basic that is flown under the radar for decades. It's called Portland limestone cement. Now, Portland limestone cement versus any other cement is like the difference. The analogy I like to use, it's the difference between Coke and Coke Zero, taste wise. There's no difference. It has the same great performance, durability, resiliency, all the attributes that you want, but with 10% less carbon. That's a huge thing. And we would love to see more people use it. We're really excited because we've got now almost 38 states, state departments of transportations that have looked at PLCs and they're like, well, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, of course we should specify this. Our problem is breaking through the institutional inertia. So there's architects and engineers that still haven't heard about this product, even though it's been used in Europe for decades. And it's not, I mean, it's just crazy when you think about it. So here is a commercial off-the-shelf option for folks, and yet they're not using it. So that's one real simple thing that folks can do is again, shift from the traditional Portland cement to a Portland limestone cement. Other things they can do, we're really high on the idea of switching from prescriptive specifications, the cookbook approach, to performance-based specifications. Again, that's something people can do today. We've had performance-based specifications for years, and people just don't take advantage of it. And again, I go back to this whole issue of institutional inertia. Look, a lot of people, they come out of school, they've learned how to, design or to do the calculations, whatever, and then they never really innovate. They're kind of stuck in there and they're in their comfort zone. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not asking them to take risk. What we're asking them to do is open up their eyes to all these solutions that have always been out there and innovate using those solutions, again, that have been out there for decades.
Rick, you mentioned, the code bodies, and that's sort of a policy discussion. Are there other policy, I guess, opportunities out there that you guys have identified, working with local jurisdictions, state, federal, local government agents? I'm just curious what's on that roadmap that we haven't.
So one of the big pieces too, I think, is this whole issue of green procurement. And we hear this a lot, green procurement. Right now, there seems to be individual activities amongst different cities on what that means to them. What we'd like to see is some real consistency. And there are some real efforts here. if you think about it, most people are real familiar with the Energy Star logo, right? That's kind of the seal that, hey, that particular appliance or device is going to save energy. At some point in time, I think we'll probably see a similar program for, reduced carbon, but it'll be a more holistic approach where people will look at it and they'll say, okay, these folks are really intentional about it. And you start to see that already with things like LEED and other activities. I think at the policy level, at the state and federal, that's where we're going to see some movement. One example, we've been in discussions with the General Services Administration high performance building team. High performance buildings really are what our roadmap are all about. It's about building intentionally. And by doing that and using a life cycle approach, cradle to grave, using a life cycle approach, you can reduce cost across the board. And by the way, you can increase tenant satisfaction for those spaces. So we've made a lot of comments to, again, it's the General Services Administration, their high performance building program. That I think is going to continue. And I think we'll see that across the board. We're in discussions with the EPA and the Department of Energy and other folks. And all of this really is coming to a head because they too are looking at our roadmap and they're partnering with us, not formally, but they're like, okay, we get what you guys are trying to do. This makes sense. We should be a part of this too. And we can help, not so much help the cement industry, but help society by incorporating these really basic things. So those are some of the things that are going on, again, today, right now.
And then, Rick, I'd love to get your thought on, you mentioned clinker, cement, concrete, the actual plants that are supplying the concrete for these projects. What are some of the things, some opportunities for those operations? Obviously, using less material is step one, but as far as the manufacturing, the mining,
Sure.
the transportation, obviously these are very complex
right.
businesses.
So there's
thoughts there?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's a couple of things. At the cement plant level, one of the big wins that we're looking at is shifting away from traditional fossil fuels to what are called alternative fuels. And again, these are materials that would likely end up in a landfill. Now, a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, you're just burning. No, we're not burning stuff. A cement plant, the material inside of that kiln has to reach a temperature of just under 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In comparison, the surface temperature of the sun is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's really hot. So we can burn a lot of materials in an environmentally friendly manner that helps us reduce our energy consumption, helps society by diverting materials that would go to a landfill and in some cases decompose into methane, which is far more destructive from a global warming standpoint than CO2. So we're looking at shifting to 50% alternative fuel use by 2050. That's really aggressive. That's at the cement plant level. At the concrete plant level, and by the way, both plants, but the other thing we can do is shift towards renewable energy. And you see a lot of industrial facilities making this shift. Look, that's a tough thing to do right now because we need a absolutely robust electric grid. And right now, that's a big gap for the federal government. And we keep going to them saying, look, you've got to beef up the infrastructure because you have a demand for renewable power. But to get that renewable power, you've got to have a sustainable, robust grid that's able to supply it 24/7. And by the way, on the infrastructure side, here's the other issue that we're trying to get across too. Look, there are other things we can look at down the road, like using hydrogen as a fuel. That's a game changer. But I don't care if it's at the cement plant or the concrete plant. If you want to use hydrogen as a fuel, either you need a very, very robust electric grid or you need pipeline capacity. We don't have the pipeline capacity right now to do that. In fact, we don't have the pipeline capacity even if we wanted to switch overnight to natural gas. So these are some of the issues that we're looking at. But again, at the plant level, switching to alternative fuels And switching to renewable energy is a huge part of the roadmap.